One chilling night, my parents had left for a dinner party, leaving me home alone. Usually, I didn't mind the solitude, but tonight felt different. Something was off. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the glowing digits of my alarm clock. It was past midnight, and the darkness outside seemed to creep into every shadow. I wrapped myself tighter in my blanket, trying to dispel the unease slithering up my spine. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint whisper barely audible over the wind's wailing. My name. Tom. It drifted up from downstairs, causing my heart to skip a beat. I froze in terror. Who could be calling my name at this hour? My parents wouldn't return for hours, and none of my friends were near. I pressed my ears for any other sounds as the house lay eerily silent, save for the occasional creaks and groans of aging wood. Torn between fear and curiosity, I hesitated before deciding to investigate. Gathering my courage, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to my bedroom door, peering into the dimly lit hallway. Each breath grew heavier as I descended the stairs, every step echoing in the stillness. The air grew colder, sending chills down my spine. At the bottom of the stairs, the whisper returned, louder this time, almost close enough to touch. Tom. Swallowing hard, I steeled myself to round the corner and enter the living room. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, bathing the room in an eerie glow. I squinted into the shadows, searching for any signs of movement, when I saw it, a figure standing by the window, its silhouette stark against the moonlit backdrop. My heart raced as I approached cautiously, my footsteps hushed on the carpet. "Who's there?" I called, my voice a mere whisper. The figure remained silent, its cold, unyielding gaze boring into me. My trembling hand reached for the light switch, flicking it on in one swift motion, illuminating the figure before me. Just a coat rack draped with my parents' outerwear, swaying gently in the breeze. I released a shaky sigh of relief, feeling foolish for letting my imagination run wild. But then, I heard it again, the whisper, now right behind me. "Tom," it hissed, sending icy chills racing down my spine. I whirled around, but no one was there. Only empty space and the faint sound of the wind outside. Panic took hold as I bolted for the front door, desperate to escape whatever unseen presence haunted our home. Just as I reached for the doorknob, a cold hand gripped my shoulder, sending waves of terror coursing through me. I spun around to confront my assailant, but there was nothing there. Only an empty hallway that stretched out like a corridor of nightmares. Stumbling backward, I tripped over my own feet, trembling with fear, when I heard it, a low, guttural growl emanating from the shadows. It was a sound I had never encountered before, primal, throaty, and full of menace. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing as I backed away from the unseen threat. Then, as suddenly as it started, the growling ceased, and the house fell silent, the only sound my rapid heartbeat resonating in my ears. Unsure of what to do, I hesitated, but then remembered that I needed to call for help. Fumbling for my cell phone, I dialed my parents' number, hands shaking. But as the phone rang, an unsettling realization struck me. The voice on the other end wasn't my mother's or father's, but that same voice from downstairs, the one which had been calling my name all along. "Tom," it whispered, sending chills surging through me. "You shouldn't have come looking for me, Tom. Now you're mine." And just like that, the line went dead, leaving me isolated in the darkness with whatever horrifying presence lurked in the shadows. I sank to my knees, tears streaming down my face as the truth dawned on me. I was not alone in the house, and whatever was with me craved more than just my name. A few years ago, my life shifted unexpectedly. It began with my decision to live alone in our spacious house. After some disagreements with my parents, I wanted to prove I could handle myself. So I moved in, full of hope and excitement for my newfound independence. Our home was old, with creaky floors and drafty hallways, but I cherished it. It was my sanctuary, my refuge from the world's troubles. Yet, living alone had its challenges. There were nights filled with fear and vulnerability, the silence wrapping around me like a haunting melody. However, I pushed through, determined to prove my worth to both my parents and myself. One fateful night, as I lay in bed absorbed in a book, a noise from the basement jolted me from my focus. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling, maybe even a stray animal seeking shelter. But as time passed, the noise grew louder and clearer, sending chills down my spine. Curiosity overwhelmed my hesitation, and I gathered my courage to investigate. I grabbed a flashlight from my bedside and made my way down the creaky stairs, the darkness of the basement enveloping me like a dense fog. Each step echoed in the empty silence, my heart racing as I swept the flashlight around, illuminating dusty corners and cobweb-covered shelves, but finding nothing unusual. Just as I decided to turn back, I heard a faint whimper from behind a stack of boxes. My heart raced, and I approached cautiously, the beam of light quaking in my hand. And there he was, a man crouched in the corner, eyes wide with fear, staring at me. I froze, fear and confusion swirling in my mind. Who was he? How did he get inside? Why was he hiding in my basement? Before I could gather my thoughts, he spoke, his voice trembling with desperation. He explained he'd been homeless, seeking shelter from the cold, and had stumbled upon my house. He begged me not to call the police, assuring me he'd leave and never return if only I spared him. Torn between fear and compassion, I hesitated. A part of me wanted to call the police, but another couldn't bear to watch him suffer. Ultimately, compassion won, and I helped him out of the basement into the night, promising to keep his secret. However, as days went by, an unsettling feeling loomed over me. What if he returned? What if he posed a threat? Pushing those thoughts aside, I tried to convince myself I had done the right thing by showing kindness. But one night, as I lay in bed listening to the wind howling outside, I heard it again. The noise from the basement, accompanied by unmistakable footsteps echoing throughout the house. My heart raced as I clutched the flashlight and crept downstairs, hands trembling with dread. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, there he was again, the man from the basement, standing in the middle of the room with a wild look in his eyes. Before I could react, he lunged toward me with outstretched hands as if to grab me. I screamed and stumbled backward, heart pounding as I frantically searched for something to defend myself with. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed it, a baseball bat leaning against the wall. Summoning adrenaline, I lunged for it, gripping it tightly. Turning to face the man, but he had vanished, disappeared into thin air as if he had never existed. I stood there, trembling with fear and confusion, unsure about what had just transpired. I wanted to call the police, to share everything I had encountered, but I feared they wouldn't believe me. They might think I was crazy, imagining the ordeal. So, I swallowed my fear, telling myself it was all a figment of my imagination, a trick of the mind fueled by anxiety and exhaustion. Deep down, however, I was aware of the truth. Someone was, in my house, someone who didn't belong, and they were watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Weeks passed, yet that feeling of unease remained. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside sent shivers down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was paranoia and there was nothing to fear, but the tension never truly dissipated. One day, while cleaning out the basement, I stumbled upon it, a makeshift bed concealed behind boxes alongside empty food wrappers and discarded clothing. Someone had been living down there all along, right under my nose, and I hadn't even realized it. Dread settled in my stomach as the implications sunk in. How long had they been there? What were their intentions? Where were they now? I wanted to flee, to escape, and never look back. But a part of me knew that wouldn't solve anything. I had to confront whoever was behind this, to end the terror that had haunted my life for too long. With newfound determination, I called the police, relaying everything from the man in the basement to the disturbances at night, to the fear that had clutched me for weeks. They responded promptly, their faces grim as they absorbed my narrative, searching the house thoroughly but finding no trace of the man who had invaded my basement. Yet just as I felt hope waning, they made a significant breakthrough. A neighbor had reported seeing a suspicious-looking man lurking nearby. When interrogated, he confessed to living in my basement for weeks, watching me silently as I carried out my daily life. He claimed he meant no harm, only desperation for food and shelter, but I knew better. As they led him away in handcuffs, I felt relief wash over me. The nightmare was finally over, and I could reclaim my life free from fear and paranoia. This incident unfolded last summer when I returned to my parents' house for the holidays. Having just completed college, I anticipated a relaxing break. There, home sat in a quiet neighborhood, thickly surrounded by tall trees that cast elongated shadows at night. It was cozy, but could feel eerie when alone in the dark. Around 3 a.m., I found myself in my room scrolling through my phone, wide awake despite the hour. Suddenly my phone rang, displaying my sister's name. It was strange since her room was just down the hall, but I answered anyway. As soon as I uttered a hello, the call dropped. Thinking she had accidentally disconnected, I got out of bed and headed to her room. Upon reaching her door, I heard her scream, a loud, terrified scream that sent chills racing down my spine. I opened the door swiftly and rushed in. She sat, upright in bed, eyes wide with fear, her face pale. I inquired what was wrong, and she pointed to a corner of the room, her hand shaking. Looking in that direction revealed no one there. She began to cry, explaining that she had woken up to find a dark shadow inches from her face, tall and menacing, making her feel suffocated. Trying to calm her, I insisted it was just a dream, yet she remained adamant it was real. She explained that she had attempted to call me for help, but when I reminded her that her phone was downstairs in her purse, confusion clouded her face. Things began to become strange then. I checked my phone and noticed a log of the call from her number, yet her phone held no record of it. It was as if the call had never taken place. Grasping the weight of the situation, we decided to descend downstairs for some clarity. As we gathered in the kitchen, a sense that something was off lingered. The house was quiet, but creaks and groans echoed like someone was moving around upstairs. I tried to reason, attributing it to the old house settling, but deep inside, I recognized something darker lay ahead. We spent hours trying to rationalize what had occurred, but each conversation only deepened our confusion, as though we were tackling a puzzle with missing pieces. Eventually we returned to bed, but sleep eluded me. Thoughts swirled around the dark shadow my sister encountered, and the mysterious call vanishing from her phone. Gradually, I began noticing strange occurrences around the house. Doors would slam shut unbidden, and I caught footsteps echoing in the hallway during the night. I attempted to convince myself it was merely the wind or figments of my imagination, but deep down, I knew it was something more significant. It felt like I had become ensnared in a horror movie, unable to find an escape from a nightmare with no end in sight. One night, fueled by determination, I decided to investigate the house thoroughly. I gathered a flashlight and examined every room, every closet, every corner, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Just as I was prepared to surrender from fatigue, I caught a faint whisper in my ear, a soft, raspy voice issuing from all corners. "Get out while you still can." I turned quickly, but again only emptiness met my gaze. It felt as if the walls themselves began whispering. I realized I had to flee the house, fast. Racing back to my room, I hurriedly packed my bag. My sister watched, confused, and when I explained we needed to leave, she appeared frightened, yet didn't argue. We swiftly packed our things and exited, not glancing back. We never returned to that house, nor did we discuss that summer again. However, I know that I will never forget the terror we experienced, nor the sense of being watched. My name is Jake, and at 23, along with my girlfriend Sarah, I found thrill in exploring abandoned places. The excitement of walking through forgotten spaces, each step echoing with the whispers of history, sparked both of us. What awaited us on that fateful night at the old haunted hospital was beyond our imagination. It was a chilly autumn evening when we decided to explore an abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the decaying structure. Ivy climbed the walls, and broken windows resembled empty eye sockets. Despite its foreboding appearance, we were drawn to the allure of the unknown. As we approached the entrance, unease washed over me. The building's history felt heavy, like an oppressive fog. Yet, I set aside my apprehension, eager to satisfy our curiosity. The rusty gates creaked open as we stepped into the courtyard, the air thick with the scent of decay and suffocating silence. We treaded through overgrown weeds, our footsteps echoed against the crumbling walls. Inside, the hospital transformed into a maze of dark corridors and empty rooms, each step sending shivers down my spine as if we were trespassing where we shouldn't. Sarah gripped my hand tightly. As we ventured deeper, the sound of our breathing amplifying in the stillness, and an unsettling feeling persisted that we were being watched. Suddenly, faint sounds drew our attention, whispers, barely audible above our heartbeats. We froze, listening as the whispers grew louder and echoed through the empty halls. Unspoken, we followed the sound, our hearts pounding as it led us to a spiral staircase descending into darkness. With trembling hands, we ventured down, our flashlights slicing through the shadows. At the staircase's base, we entered a dimly lit corridor lined with doors, each one beckoning us with promises of horrors beyond imagination. Dread settled as we opened door after door, still searching for the source of the whispers. Yet, the deeper we delved, the louder the murmurs became, filling the air with an almost tangible sense of terror. Then we realized we were not alone. Shapes flickered in the dark, shadows flitting in and out of sight like phantoms. I felt cold, relentless eyes scrutinizing us from the shadows, and the whispers grew more frantic, twisting into something sinister. Panic clawed at my chest as we stumbled through the labyrinthine halls, desperate to escape the unseen horrors. Then, just when we felt we might crack, we stumbled upon a door unmatched by the others, aged and weathered, its surface marred by neglect. As we approached, the whispers crescendoed, an overwhelming cacophony of voices filling the air. With trembling hands, I opened the door to reveal a room bathed in eerie blue light. Shadows danced across the walls, their movements unnaturally fluid. In the center stood a figure, features shrouded in darkness, eyes gleaming with otherworldly light, and a cruel smile twisting its mouth. It was the embodiment of our fears, the source of the whispers. Without a word, Sarah and I turned and fled, our hearts pounding as we raced through the corridors, footsteps echoing against the walls, desperate to escape the haunted hospital. Even as the whispers echoed in our minds, we refused to glance back, determined to escape the horrors once and for all. Bursting through the gates into the crisp night air, we breathed a sigh of relief, thankful to be alive. Yet even as we distanced ourselves from the abandoned hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us out, something that would haunt our dreams for years to come. It was a stormy night, the sort where the wind howls like a wounded beast, and rain batters the windows like icy needles. Amid this tempest, I find myself alone with my little brother Tim. Our family had left for a week-long trip, leaving us to fend for ourselves. I wasn't thrilled about being responsible for my 8-year-old brother, especially on such a night, but I felt reassured by the presence of food and emergency numbers. As the darkness enveloped the house, the storm intensified, rattling the windows and shaking our home's very foundation. Tim and I huddled on the couch, trying to occupy ourselves with a movie, but the storm's ferocity made concentration nearly impossible. As midnight approached, Tim drifted off to sleep beside me, snuggled for warmth against the cold. But I couldn't shake the ominous foreboding in the air. Lightning illuminated the room in stark bursts, casting sinister shadows that seemed to reach for us. Then, within the chaos, I saw him, a tall figure standing outside the window. My heart skipped a beat, and I held my breath, hoping it was merely a trick of the lightning. Yet, the figure remained, tall and foreboding, his silhouette stark against the dark. He seemed to stare straight at me, observing with those chilling, piercing eyes. My instinct urged me to wake Tim, to inform him of what I was witnessing, but paralyzing fear kept me rooted in place. I watched in horror as the figure approached our window, moving deliberately. Another flash of lightning illuminated his face, distorted into a cruel smile. A shiver ran down my spine as he tapped on the glass, the sound echoing through the room like a grim omen. Tim stirred next to me, but I didn't dare move. I prayed for dawn to arrive, to push away the formidable shadows that lurked. The figure tapped again, more insistently this time, and I felt panic surging within me. Before I could act, he tried to open the window. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, mind racing with thoughts of escape. But before action could be taken, the window creaked open and the figure slipped inside. I backed away, heart thundering as he rose to his full height, looming over me, obscuring his features further in darkness. The stench of decay seeped into my senses, a sickly odor that churned my stomach. "Who are you?" I barely whispered, my voice trembling. The figure remained silent, taking another step closer, intentions unclear. I yearned to flee, to scream for help, but fear shackled me, leaving me paralyzed as he drew nearer, his suffocating presence encroaching. Just as he came closer, instantly, he vanished. Blinking, I grappled with the reality. Had it all been an illusion, a trick of the storm? An open window confirmed it had been real. He had stood inches away, and now that window gaped open, the remnants of his presence still echoing hauntingly. I staggered backward, legs threatening to buckle beneath me. I needed to escape. I had to find safety until dawn. With trembling hands, I gathered Tim and rushed out of the house, not daring to glance back as we stumbled into the cool night. The storm continued to rage around us, its fury paralleling the terror still coursing through my veins. That figure lurked out there, somewhere, waiting in the shadows, always shadowing our every step. But as daylight broke through the clouds, casting aside the darkness, I vowed to never forget the night the tall man came to visit and the fear he ushered in. The worst experience of my life began around 1996 while I was team driving with another individual. After picking up our load and scaling it, I opted to take the first shift. I drove through relentless rain from Detroit, Michigan to just shy of St. Louis, Missouri. We swapped out at a rest area, catching up on our logs. Tired from a 10-hour night drive, one thing stuck with me from before I started driving. The other driver said, grinning, "If we get killed, I'll come haunt you." He zipped up the curtain before drifting off to sleep. After I took over, I closed the curtain and watched my cousin Vinny to help me fall asleep. As I settled into the bunk, I succumbed to thoughts of what I might do if we were to go over an embankment or cliff. My best decision was to get as low as possible and pray. Soon enough, I began drifting to sleep. Approximately 45 minutes later, I woke to John yelling, "Expletive, hang on!" I sensed something was wrong. We were weaving, and I knew the truck was off balance. He yelled again, and instinctively, I hit the floor, praying. Were we heading over a cliff? The curtain zipped closed obscured my view of the front. Suddenly, the truck seemed to vibrate violently, upon impact, as if we had collided with something. Yet the forward momentum remained steady. That sound and the feeling will forever be etched in my memory. In that moment, everything transpired so quickly. I grasped none of it until we slid on wet pavement, airborne, and into oncoming traffic just west of St. Louis on I-5544, concluding with a head-on collision with another vehicle. Our semi flipped over, facing eastward, and everything fell silent. Once more, shock consumed me. I could scarcely comprehend what had happened. John called to see if I was okay, and I replied, "Yeah, let's get out of here. I smell smoke." Having sat on the passenger side floor during the wreck, I now faced the roof's opening as my door. John followed closely behind me. Suddenly, I was standing in my socks on a wet highway, mingling with diesel fuel, as smoke billowed from the barely recognizable hood. I was in such a daze, struggling to comprehend reality, until I noticed people rushing towards the white pickup truck we had struck, wielding fire extinguishers. It felt surreal, like a hazy dream. I remember feeling cold and noticing blood seeping from my hand and mouth. Once I got my bearings, the fire was extinguished, and the white truck's occupants were being consoled by an ambulance worker. I observed, from a distance, watching her mouth the words, "I know," with a compassionate expression. Shortly after, John and I found ourselves in an ambulance headed to the hospital. As we pulled away, I couldn't suppress tears as I imagined the terror each person in the white pickup must have felt, seeing our semi barreling toward them. Days later, I intentionally left out some gory details that no one should ever witness or hear about. At the hospital, I learned that all 3 occupants of the truck, a man, his wife, and their 4-year-old daughter, had perished. I felt guilt akin to that of individuals who mentioned providing CPR to victims from previous accounts. I contemplated, why did I survive a horrific accident that claimed 3 lives? I will never forget the smell that morning, standing amidst diesel fuel mixed with rain. That stretch of highway was nicknamed Blood Alley, due to its history of severe accidents. Months later, I drove through that very area and noticed they had patched up the highway. I wished it could have been done sooner. These memories still haunt me. It's painful to bring up this experience so many years later, but I hope to remind everyone to drive with complete focus, especially nowadays when people are texting, eating, or reading on the road. Never take even the shortest trips for granted. My name is Alex, and at 22 years old, I live alone in a cozy little house on the outskirts of town. It's a quiet area, especially at night, where the sounds of rustling leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl fill the air. Typically, I relish the solitude, but tonight feels distinctly different. An unsettling absence of the moon amplifies the darkness, each shadow seeming to consume everything whole. Currently, I sit in my living room, encapsulated by shadows, illuminated only by a faint lamp. The clock ticks loudly in this ominous silence, and an unease has gnawed at me all evening. I had hoped for a simple night of movies and solitude, yet as the hours pass, a paranoia creeps in, engulfing me in its grasp. I attempt to alleviate my anxiety, attempting to focus on the film, dismissing every creak of the house as a figment of an overactive imagination. Suddenly, a soft scratching sound breaks through the stillness, making my heart skip a beat. I strain to listen, yet the sound vanishes, leaving me questioning if I imagined it. I attempt to concentrate on the movie, but the noise resurfaces, an insistent scratching now, this time echoing from upstairs, near my bedroom. I freeze, icy, dread curdling my blood as I realize something sinister resides above me. With a shaky hand, I reach for the remote, intending to turn off the TV and retreat to my room. But I hear it again, louder this time. Summoning all my courage, I slowly ascend the staircase, every step seeming to stretch into eternity as the scratching amplifies in a terrifying crescendo. At the landing, I pause, listening intently until it seems to emanate from behind my bedroom door. My heart pounds as I grasp the doorknob, hesitating before pushing the door open, wary of an unimaginable horror awaiting me. The room sits empty, draping in darkness, save for the moonlight shedding its light. A wave of relief sweeps over me. Perhaps I was only being paranoid. That is, until I spot the source of the commotion. a jagged mark running down the wall resembling claw marks. My blood runs cold as reality dawns on me. I am not alone in this house. Something malevolent lurks among the shadows. Blinded by fear, I dart for the exit, only to hear the sound of laughter creeping through the darkness. A low and menacing echo that fills my being with terror. I freeze, heart racing as the laughter envelops me, and from the shadows emerges a nightmarish figure with glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth. I scream, the sound reverberating through the empty house as the creature lunges. Then everything fades to black. When I awaken, sunlight struggles through the curtains, the morning greeting me. For a fleeting moment, I ponder if it had just been a dream, but upon seeing the scratch on the wall, I cannot dismiss the horrors lurking in the shadows. Fleeing from the house, with a vow to never return, I am haunted by the feeling that something still observes me, patiently waiting for nightfall to strike again. A couple of years ago, I was enjoying a rare evening of tranquility, home alone. My parents were out on a dinner date, and my siblings had left for college. I looked forward to a night of binge-watching my favorite TV series while indulging in guilty snack pleasures. As I settled on the couch, I noticed how eerily quiet the house was. The creaks and groans of the old wooden floorboards felt amplified, and the wind outside whispered strange melodies. I tried to dismiss the creeping unease, convincing myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as the night wore on, the strange noises grew louder and more frequent. I heard footsteps outside my room and the sound of someone rummaging through the kitchen. I told myself it was just the house settling, but deep down, I knew something was off. Ignoring my pounding heart, I decided to investigate. With curiosity and trepidation in equal measure, I stood up from the couch and entered the kitchen, my senses on high alert. Upon entering, I found the lights on and the room immaculate. Still, an unsettling feeling hung in the air. Suddenly, a faint whisper brushed against my ear, a soft, raspy voice resonating all around me. Spinning around, I found no one there. The voice grew louder, more insistent, urging me to get out while you still can. Realizing I had to act quickly, I snatched my phone and dashed toward the front door. But as I stretched out my hand for the doorknob, I found it was locked. Panic set in, and the whispering grew more menacing. I needed to think fast. Racing back to the living room, I grabbed a nearby vase as a makeshift weapon. Frozen in fear, I heard heavy footsteps from the hallway growing closer. I raised the vase, ready to defend myself. But as the figure entered the room, it was not what I imagined. It was a woman, tall, gaunt, with long silver hair and eyes that seemed to penetrate my soul. Dressed in a flowing white gown, she approached, with slow, deliberate movements, chilling me to the core. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't reply, but extended a bony hand and touched my face, sending a jolt of electricity through me. Suddenly, visions flooded my mind. A joyful family, laughter fading into tragedy, a loss that consumed them all. I saw the woman in the same spot, her eyes filled with sorrow. As the visions faded, I realized she was a ghost trapped in our home for decades. I knew I had to help her find peace. With newfound courage, I reached for her hand. Together, we wandered through the house, unveiling secrets and memories long hidden. As we approached the front door, I understood it was time to set her free. I opened the door and she vanished into the night, her eyes finally at peace. As I stood there, relief washed over me. I knew I would never forget this night. I had faced my fears and helped a lost soul find tranquility. I'd always be grateful for that experience.